Games. We are back with Phantomite. So, why don't you go ahead and get right into it? Introduce yourself, tell everyone how and why you started playing Eve.
Thank you. Yeah, I am Phantomite. I have always been a PvPer in this game, but I would say that that has stretched all the way from solo PvP all the way to extremely large fleets and everywhere from Tech 1 frigates all the way up to super capital ships as well. These days, the current version of Eve that I play is one where I am a corp leader and a fleet commander, and I've been doing that for about 2 years. This is my first time being a corp leader and a fleet commander. There's always something new. It's been over 17 years, and there's always something new to try, even within one particular gameplay style, such as PvP.
Okay, fantastic. So, of course, you're running for the CSM19 again. You've already been on the CSM before, so we have some interesting questions later. But why don't you tell us what your top 3 campaign points are?
I've got a number of things on my website that I would like to address. I think that a lot of players, especially players who have played for a number of years, are going to most commonly know me for my views on projection in Eve, notably Ansible X jump gates in SOV null space. It's definitely my number one point. I won't go too deep into it now, but the gist of it is that I feel that the way that they are designed currently allows these very large groups to pack all of their membership into one central headquarters fortress system, while simultaneously allowing them all very quick access to the edge of their vast empire. And I feel that's not entirely appropriate, or doesn't really allow for a lot more tumultuous, a lot more exciting, a lot more war-driven nullsec, which is where I really want to see this end up. Something else that I'm really looking to achieve if I manage to get onto the CSM, is I want to take a look at several aspects of faction war, which has been a fantastic experience for the last 2 years. I've spent nearly all of the last 2 years in faction warfare on both the Caldari and the Galente side, switching occasionally. And currently, the direction that we've taken our corporation and our alliance is to be neutral and just shoot everyone. I feel that there are a number of things around how easy it is for people to run bots in faction warfare, the lack of consequences for AWOXing or shooting people who are friendly within your militia, that don't really turn it into the potential that it really does have. I want there to be some more consequences for people shooting their friendlies, which, to clarify, always needs to be possible in the game, otherwise it wouldn't be Eve. And some changes to how the faction warfare complexes where people go to earn ISK and ideally to fight each other, how they work as well. I have a number of other things that I want to address. It's difficult to pick one for third, so I'll tell you what I'm going to do is, from the list on my website, I'm going to pick something that I don't get to talk about as often.
Okay.
And that is, I would like to improve the mechanics around trust in this game. Trust is a feature of the game which has been cut down in the last few years. There used to be certain things that you would do in the game where you would choose how much information you would reveal to your friends in case any of them was a spy. But a number of those things have gone away now. I'll give you an example. Right now, obviously, a number of the viewers here will have seen and perhaps even interacted with citadels. So the player stations that have a bunch of weapons on that you can tether your ship to so that nobody can target you. It used to be quite different before the introduction of citadels. Fewer people watching will have interacted with a POS, a player-owned structure. It's basically a stick anchored in space with a big shield around it, and if you want to go inside those shields so that you're safe, you either need to be within the corporation or alliance that owns it, or you need the password so that your ship can go into the shields. And this gave rise to an interesting set of circumstances that was based around trust in the past. It meant that if you wanted to stage your ships in there, you wanted your fleet to wait inside safely, or perhaps more bombastically, if you wanted to keep your super carrier or your Titan inside one of those shields, which is typically where they would be, if you were a large group, you had to tell increasing numbers of people the password. And of course, that means that as your group got bigger, it got harder and harder to keep that a secret. And when that secret leaked out, another group, very often Pandemic Legion back in the day, would show up in Macarials, type in the password, and bump your Titan out of the shields and kill it. And we don't have trust-based mechanics in this game anywhere close to the same extent anymore. And I would really like to see that return.
Okay, sounds like three very interesting points. I would like to elaborate on projection a little bit. We had another small gang PvPer earlier in the week, well, last week, I guess, get in. So really, what is projection? What can be used for projection? You covered antiplexes, but what else?
So capital ships using their jump drives is a form of projection. Black Ops battleships using their jump drives, or opening a bridge to bring an entire fleet of other compatible ships through is projection. Projection is the ability to skip the geography of the game, be it via an Ansiblex gate to not have to take as many stargates, through a Titan bridge so that you can skip a number of stargates, a capital fleet jumping so that you can skip the stargates. Projection is a subject that almost entirely encompasses skipping the geography of the game. And we have two very different types of projection at the moment. We have Capital and Black Ops jumps, which are subject to jump fatigue. In simple terms, you jump to a Sino with any of these ships, or you are bridged through a Titan to a sinusoidal field, and you gain a timer that stops you from jumping again immediately. If you jump in quick succession at the end of each timer, that timer gets bigger until it reaches a maximum of half an hour between jumps. Essentially, what this serves to do with capital ships is it stops you from going from one end of the galaxy to the other in minutes. And this was introduced a good few years ago in an expansion called Phoebe. And as soon as Phoebe hit and it introduced jump fatigue, I was with what would become Snuffed Out at the time. And regardless of how people feel about Snuffed Out these days, at the time, what it allowed us to do was to actually use capitals for more than 5 minutes. We used to use a capital ship like a triage carrier or some dreadnoughts, and we would have 5 to 10 minutes before we got hot dropped by a gigantic force from the other end of the galaxy. We could start using these capital ships in combat, then we could open the map, look at the Sinos, and we could see the Sinos lighting one by one over the minutes until they got to us. And then the fight would be over because a huge blob would be there to try and kill capitals. Phoebe arrived with jump fatigue, and not just for Snuffed Out, but for many groups all over EVE in LowSec and NullSec, it allowed them to start doing things that they had previously been unable to do, and it allowed them to grow as groups. Now, of course, we have Ansiblex gates, which allow fleet to skip geography with basically zero meaningful penalty whatsoever. So a couple of types of projection, but it all comes down to skipping the geography of the game.
So in the ranks of projection, from Ansiblex probably being the worst, what goes from the worst to least in your opinion?
The least. Well, there are other forms of projection that are slightly weird in comparison. So I've got to mention those before I rank them. There's travel through various types of wormholes as well. But of course, with a wormhole, it's limited by mass. You can only bring a certain number of ships in certain sizes through. You also don't know where the wormholes are going to be tomorrow. They go to different places. They're random. They don't always go exactly where you want them to. I would say that the best form of projection maybe could be considered wormholes, because they are not at the beck and call of the players. They are random in a lot of ways, meaning that they do not form a reliable route with which you can bring an unlimited number of people through them. In the middle, I would then put regular. After that, I would put Black Ops projection. They get a bonus to their fatigue. They don't have to wait for as long a time as regular capital ships. I think that that's good, because these ships, they don't have the same hit points as capitals. They don't have the same combat abilities as capitals. I think that that's fine, given that these ships are, a lot smaller and a lot weaker than capitals. Then there's capitals, and I think that they're in a reasonably healthy place with the amount of time that it gives you when you can't jump again. And at the bottom of the pile here, Ansible X projection. As long as you're friends with the guys around you, and nullsec people are friends with a lot of the guys around them, you can travel around often half the universe in a fraction of the time that it would take to use gates. So that's definitely at the very bottom of this ranking.
Okay, so we're going to kind of switch focus a little bit, and we're going to focus on new players for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing new players today?
I think this is quite an easy answer for me, actually. It's obviously difficult as a current player of the game to always be able to put yourself in the shoes of a new player, because people who've played the game before, or even for a long time like me, have a disadvantage of already knowing things. That doesn't go away. Even some people who have quit the game for a number of years and then come back, it's like riding a bike to them. They can pick up a lot of the game instantly again. I think that the biggest challenge facing new players is being conned. And I don't mean getting conned with like a scam contract or being scammed out of their risk. I think that these players arrive in the game. They are rightly told that they will have the most fun in this game by joining a group of players. And they have no real way of knowing if the people they are joining are genuinely enthusiastic about the game. They have no way of knowing if these players are hating the game and discouraging everybody who joins them to do certain things. There's a lot of new players who join the game. They look at a corp advert, and the corp advert says, we have veterans and new players. We do PvP and we do mining. They join in and they ask about PvP, and they are told that PvP is evil. It costs too much money. You should never do it, and you'll just get unhappy. That's not true. And again, there are a lot of groups that are essentially running their groups like slave labor, so they can tax their membership. They have ore and loot buyback schemes at sort of 50% JITA value. They are essentially looking to just pull as many people in as possible and then rinse as much ISK out of them as possible, not really caring about helping them to enjoy the game and create their own stories. The biggest challenge, not knowing where to go and what warning signs to look out for.
Okay, so then you've been a CSM before. You've probably gotten some stats from a couple years ago on the player churn. What advice would you give if you got onto CSM19 on how to improve the new player retention?
I think that I have a very clear idea of a way to get people into groups in a much friendlier way. The common thought is that new players should join the game and join a corporation. Now, it is true that joining a corporation is a far greater game experience than not, and that you will stick around longer if you join a corporation. I think that it's a bit of an error to take from that means you should just pick a corp and join it until you find one. I think that a much better thing that CCP should aim to do with new players is find ways to make these players meet each other, talk to each other, as many people as possible, so that people start forming friendships. After that, corporations come naturally. They will either form one themselves, or they will together look for a good group to join. And two pairs of eyes is better than one when searching for somewhere good to join. I think that the metrics showing that people in corps last longer, I think that what those metrics are likely to actually show is that people who make friends last longer in this game.
Yeah, I totally
So
agree with
I
that.
would, I would urge CCP to take their foot off the gas regarding the idea of get players into corps, and I would entirely focus on find ways for players to meet each other and make friends. Corporations will happen naturally after that.
So one of the
I
things that
yeah.
I think that CCP is trying to do is they really want to get people into faction warfare. So they've gone through, they've done their career missions, they're working on maybe their air career mission things, and now they need to get in faction warfare where they're going to actually come face to face with other players. But there's kind of like a broken bridge in the middle. What do you think that CCP could do to get people from the career missions out into LowSec?
It's a very difficult question because the state of LowSec is that it is sort of very much throwing somebody into shark-infested waters. There's no in-between space between high sec and low sec. I don't think there should be, but it does mean that it can be quite the culture shock to go from interacting with NPCs and friends to an area of space where almost everybody, including some people within your own militia, want you dead. However, I do think that in at the deep end is one of the best ways that people can learn. Now, I think that the easiest way for new players to get into faction warfare without becoming just straight up repeatedly obliterated and demoralized is, again, to do it as part of a group, always as part of a group. I feel like direct enlistment and joining an NPC militia corporation in some ways feels a bit like a trap. Because that's not pushing you down the route of entering faction warfare in a collaborative manner. It's pushing you down the idea of faction warfare as a solo, no help, no advice path. And so I think, again, this is something that is easily solved by making people make friends rather than making them join faction warfare to make friends, if that makes sense.
So then, okay, I claim that I don't have any real gotcha questions, but I do kind of have one for
Yeah.
the longer playing players. When's the last time you ran through the NPE?
It was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
I've run through the NPE with the air frigate, the air Astero, and it's super cool, but it is still very difficult to go through the NPE without without anticipating what it's going to do next, without knowing all of the tricks, without knowing, just rapidly clicking through the menus because I already know this type thing. So, it has been a couple of years since then, but I know that it hasn't changed much since. I have watched about 3 years ago somebody else who had never played go through the NPE, and it is greatly improved from how it was back in my day in like 2007, 2008. So, it is good, but something I think that it needs is content that extremely early, even during tutorial portions, throws you into places with other players in high sec, with the safeties locked on during the tutorial content. But I think that the game would do a lot better to put people alongside other new players and to also have the game highlight, look, that over there, that's another player. Ignore his name if it turns out to be rude or a joke or immersion breaking, but that there is another player and he's doing the same content as you right next to you. And I think that would hammer down the idea to new players that this very much is a multiplayer game, and it's a multiplayer game that works best in collaboration.
Okay, so you're really onto community here. It's obviously important. Other players are important. What is your definition of community within EVE Online?
There are so many different forms of community. It's I think that you would see communities spring up just from, to go back to it again, making people interact with each other and make friends. And there are communities of extremely nice, friendly, polite people. There are communities that have the air of a frat house. There are communities of veteran players teaching newer players. It's difficult to define what makes a community aside from the very simplistic idea of a group of people who enjoy each other's company.
Okay, that is absolutely fair enough. That's a perfectly
Mm,
good definition. So then, when we talk about EVE Online communities, putting
mm,
people together, sometimes we're not our best version of ourselves, and
mm,
there are toxic things that come into the game. And
mm.
before we get into the discussion, I'm not calling toxicity, calling someone a noob, or or melting the face off of a one-day-old player, PvP, ganking,
Yeah,
salt, minor
yeah,
salt, and
yeah.
whatnot. I'm talking about all the things that we shouldn't be
Mm,
bringing into the game. What's your stance
mhm.
on it?
I mean, you know, there's something interesting that CCP does, or more accurately, doesn't do in this game, is in their chat channels, obviously most notably local, they don't block you from typing slurs. And I think that that's actually a genius idea because players are very quickly punished when that is reported. They are punished harshly, as they should be, but it feels like a two-edged sword. On the one hand, intensely offensive language makes it to the eyes of the people who are receiving it. On the other hand, it allows these people to out themselves and get instantly banned from the game. But it's important that these people get rooted out so that they don't do it in private where CCP can't take action. But it's a shame that it happens, and what's interesting is isn't automatically detected and dealt with by CCP.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a tightrope to for the game design to cross, because a vast amount of what we would consider toxic in terms
Right.
of behavior and language is completely off platform, but intensely tied with EVE Online, by which I mean third party. Well, I call it third party voice, Discord and things like that. EVE
Mhm.
voice hasn't been a thing for a long time, so it's not happening on platform.
So,
It's it's a very difficult thing for CCP to even begin to try and address, because it's a bit of a Pandora's box for them if they started to act upon things that were said off platform. They do something interesting though, is that if they find evidence of you being incredibly problematic off platform, that does make you ineligible to run for CSM.
yep.
They do count that, so that there is a line that CCP has, that if you cross it off of their platform, they don't want to hear from you
And
or indeed promote you in any way. Yeah.
I believe that also goes for if you ever had dreams of being partner, that makes you ineligible as well.
Yes, good point. Yes, they look into that as well. They don't want their logo attached to toxic behavior.
Yep.
So it's a very difficult subject matter,
So
given where it happens.
so then what happens when you personally encounter it? How do you deal with it?
It really depends on how offensive it is, and that is obviously a very subjective matter. On the one hand, I could say that if somebody said something ban worthy to me in game, for me personally, it's unlikely I'd report it unless it was obscenely egregious, but that doesn't mean that other people shouldn't report that. If somebody has done something that is clearly against the terms of service regarding toxicity, it's up to every person how they wish to deal with it. I would say that, and I'm sure that you know this as well, that being in the public eye for EVE Online does mean that you see a lot more nasty comments.
Absolutely.
But who am I to tell people how thick their skin should be? If it's offensive, it's offensive, and nobody else should be telling other people what they should and shouldn't bother pursuing.
Okay, so now we're going to move into my favorite section of this interview. And since you have been a CSM, it's not really, fair because you know the answer to all these questions. So we're just going to go into advice. So a lot of CSM that are going into their first meeting, they have an idea of their platform and what they want to promote. But sometimes, your ideas and CCPs just totally aren't going to align. When CCP reveals the next expansion, the next couple expansions, and it doesn't have anything to do with what they're passionate about, what's your advice to them?
This might actually be a little bit surprising with me having been on the CSM. In my run in 2020, before I made it onto the CSM, I was told that a lot of the things that I wanted to get done, which were big things, were simply not possible to get CCP to do unless CCP was already looking to look into those things. I was also told during the term by fellow CSM members that some of the things I was asking for are never going to get done and they have asked before and not to bother. And I found both of those things to be false. Obviously, I know that I'm not going to be able to take my entire list of changes, major and small, and convince CCP to do them all in one term. I know that that's simply not possible. But the idea that CCP isn't going to at all do anything that is off schedule for them is, I do believe, genuinely false. If I didn't think that that was false, I wouldn't be running now. I have been a CSM member. I want to get major things done, and I know that it is absolutely possible to get these major things done. Sometimes people have pointed to the more recent public understanding that CCP would like to see CSM candidates that are relevant to their upcoming plans. And, I can understand why that's really important for them to have the best ideas on those plans, the most educated ideas on those plans. But it's simply not true that off-plan things don't get done. If you can approach CCP and you can explain the value of some of these potential changes you have in mind, and you can work logically through the pros and cons, and you can work through the dissenting arguments against it logically, then CCP does take it into mind. And it may not be during that term that they do it, but I have found that it can be very soon after the term that they get around to those things. If it's good, if you can explain it well enough and prove it, it will make it onto the schedule.
Yep.
And that's small and large.
Get the conversation going. So then, as well as I do, you play EVE long enough, something that you like doing or your community likes doing is going to get axed or nerfed. What advice would you give to other CSMs whose playstyle or their community's playstyle is ultimately up on the chopping block?
A lot of people have faced this over the years, particularly in the last 8 or 9 years since the advent of Citadels coming to the game. A lot of people's play styles have been obliterated, or at the very least, almost entirely made extinct, thereby making these people leave the game. Now, there is an element of adapt or die, as we've just seen in the chat there is an element of adapt or die. Something that I've found I've been able to do in this game over 17 years of playing is I have been able to pack up, move, start fresh with a new group of friends. As long as I have kept moving when a certain exact play style has died, then I've been able to find the fun. And something that a message that I'd like to get out there for people who are no longer considered new players is, if your group that does the things that you like disintegrates, don't give up. It very much may be daunting, but it very much is worth going out there and looking for a new group of friends. You did it once, I guarantee you can do it again, and you will have doubled your friend circle, and you'll have found the fun in Eve again. Now, that obviously the elephant in the room there is that some types of play are borderline impossible sometimes. Notably, a decade ago, huge blows were dealt to the solo community in this game. Something that you now had to be a small gang to achieve, which isn't everybody's cup of tea. It is something that I am very much trying to bring back with a lot of my suggestions. I don't want to approach the CSM with a bunch of hyper-specific ship and weapon balances. I do have some of those, but I do believe that there are some very large, overarching things, strategies in the game that need to be reshaped, that should cascade down to making a much better solo and small gang experience in this game. And so that's my advice for people who feel they might have been left behind. There is something for you to do, and in the extreme cases, I do want to bring it back.
So, as a CSM, are we able to kind of persuade CCP not to, act something, or maybe negotiate on not making it as bad as it could have been?
Absolutely, and this has happened multiple times during my term, and what we have seen recently with Skyhooks is that it's been very clear that an element of nullsec lobbying has taken place, and it has made CCP change their plans, in my opinion, for the worse in this case. But the CSM regularly helps CCP to change things in, let's say it, their favor. I just feel that the game is in drastic need of more CSM members who aren't going to give up, or who can join a growing voice from hopefully a more diverse CSM, so that these things can be changed before launch. Give it another 3 years, and I'll tell you how some of the plans from 2020 were presented to us and how we helped change them before launch.
So then, if there are communities out there who don't have a CSM representative, let's say I don't make it onto the CSM again, and the incursion community doesn't have anyone to speak for them, and they come to you and say, "Hey, we have this problem. Could you approach CCP about this?" Would you be willing to hear them out?
Absolutely. Now, it would be disingenuous for me to imply that I would be the ideal CSM member in terms of expertise for a group of players that I'm not very familiar with their play style. But these are the CSM members we get, and people should always approach the current CSM, even if those CSM members don't match their play style. Should always approach them. I have found that the majority of current CSM members, and I would very much hope myself, that would be up to other people to decide, have been very available and have always been able to give time, often on voice, so people can not just say this is a problem, but explain it as well and help the chosen CSM member to understand the problem.
Okay.
As much as I am fighting the good fight against the what I regard selfish desires of most of nullsec, those guys are listeners as well, and you should and you can approach them.
So then the last question in this line of questions is players sometimes expect the CSM to do miracles and go in and demand changes or fixes. What advice would you give to the new CSM coming in about how to balance their role as a CSM along with the NDA while making players feel heard?
They can offer, at the very least, to pass on these concerns. Players may be surprised to hear just how much CCP does ask the CSM about. CCP can often ask quite rapid fire a broad set of subjects, even just within one meeting, not just over an entire week or over the entire term. There are plenty of people at CCP who are interested to hear these viewpoints. What you will often find is that if a problem is wide-reaching enough, then a lot of them you'll have already heard of, these problems. So you'll be able to tell CCP, by the way, a whole bunch of people saying this is going on when it would be better if it was like this. CCP is open to listening. They do ask a lot more than some people might think. And you shouldn't give up on talking to CSM candidates if you don't think that something is getting addressed. Now, obviously, that does come with, as I'm sure you'll be familiar, you as a CSM member, you do receive the occasional person who is very clearly asking for something extremely unreasonable. You know, somewhat a player out there may very well strongly believe that they are right to ask that CCP releases installable solo servers so they can play EVE themselves at home without fighting anybody else. But there does come a point where you've got to be happy with sometimes disappointing people with your viewpoints compared to theirs. There's a reason that the CSM should be a very broad mix of candidates, and it's so that people can find somebody who understands their problem best of all. There have definitely been times when people have approached me, and I would imagine that there have been times when people have approached you, that there is not one single player across the entire game who could possibly agree with what this person is asking for. And you just got to be ready to disappoint people sometimes.
Yep, there's only so
Yeah,
many things, and I think you can agree as
yep,
well that
yep.
some of these ideas, if you went to CCP and presented them, they're never going to take you seriously again.
No, no, exactly. I think that it is important that you spend your time as an elected CSM person honestly pursuing things that you genuinely believe in, rather than just acting as a conduit for anybody to shout into and for it to come out of your mouth to CCP. That's not what CCP has got you there for.
Yep.
They don't have you there to just be a forwarding service for people's messages, which is why we spend all of this time in these weeks and some of us months campaigning so that we can prove that we are experts in our subject matters.
Yep.
CCP wants to hear from experts in subject matters, various subject matters across EVE. They don't have time or effort to devote to 100% of the things that 500,000 people have to say. It's a filter.
Yep.
It's not fair, but it is the best system available.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then I have a few questions that are coming from my community, Eve Rookies. And the first one is multi-boxing. So where this comes from is half of my community is multi-boxers. And the other half of the community believes that everyone should have one account and only one account, and maybe even get rid of slots number 2 and 3. What's your stance on multi-boxing?
it's extremely important to highlight at the beginning that there is a distinct difference between multi-boxing and input broadcasting. They are two very different things that are often conflated. Multi-boxing, all that means is running more than one account, sometimes not even at the same time. You can multi-box, but just do one at a time so that you can do things in various different places all over the game. Typically, multi-boxing does mean running multiple accounts simultaneously. As we speak, I am logged into 3 accounts right now. It is my only 3 accounts, as it turns out. Input broadcasting, just to clarify, is when people use software so that they can push one button and have actions happen across all of their Eve clients all at exactly the same moment, and that is explicitly banned by the end user license agreement, and CCP do pursue people who do that. That is against the rules of Eve.
Yep.
Multi-boxing then, which is using multiple accounts so that you can do several things at the same time. Eve Online is a premium subscription MMO. It is not a free-to-play game, despite the fact that we have alpha status for accounts here. Alpha status is a taster, an indefinite taster of the game. But this is a premium subscription MMO, which is a very rare thing today. It is also, because of the nature of the mechanics of Eve, a premium subscription MMO is the only way that this game can start to approach fair as regards to combat and the economy in the game. Now, a lot of people have a lot of problems with multi-boxing because they feel that they are missing out on things that multi-boxers get to take advantage of. I multi-box. One of the most important things about multi-boxing for me is because I am a pirate, because I am -10 security status, I can't go to Jita, I can't go shopping. So one of the most important roles for another account for me is that I can have a character to go and fetch me ships and do all my shopping for me.
But
Multi-boxing is... Go on, sorry.
Wouldn't some people say that, that's a consequence of being a pirate? That you're basically stuck in low sec and have to operate there?
Yes, it is. And so my penalty is that I have to pay twice. As it is, it's in my view, it's not really that different to having somebody in your corp who does your hauling for you. Except, I'm not imposing this upon somebody so that I can do this. I think it's also important to consider that if you enforced no multi-boxing, like we have with if you try and run multiple alphas or an alpha and an omega at the same time, the client will show you a message when you try and connect a second account saying, thanks for your enthusiasm, but you can only multi-box omega accounts. What you would find is if CCP enforced no multi-boxing, is that the worst people in the game, people who exploit the game, people who break the EULA, would have zero trouble at all getting past those. So you would be preventing people who are playing the game legally and doing nothing against the people who are playing the game illegally if CCP were to enforce this. We see it with botters who get banned and banned and banned and banned. It does nothing to these professionals. They are running virtual machines. They are running VPNs. They are running EVE Online in data centers. They are faking the hardware IDs of their computer so that they can't be tracked. Banning multi-boxing is just simply not physically possible at the moment, but it is somewhat balanced by the fact that this is a premium subscription only MMO.
Okay, so then along the same lines is what are your feelings on skill injectors?
I come from an era in the game where every single skill was trained in real time and there was no injection whatsoever. I do think that it has brought some issues to the game. However, I think that it has by far much more hugely benefited people getting a leg up in this game. There are some super rich people out there who will roll and inject a Titan pilot in one day. But it like a lot of things, again, it is a two-edged sword. What skill injectors allows a lot of people in this game to do is get a leg up, progress faster, have a lot more fun, a lot more quickly. And the key thing to remember about injecting skills is that no amount of real money paid to CCP will ever come close to beating actual experience earned in-game by learning and creating a new intuition in yourself as to how you fit your ships, how you fly your ship in space. The only people who are going to be good at EVE Online are people who are enjoying EVE Online and who are actually playing it and getting experience.
And
Injectors are never going to be an I win button.
And then recently this year, CCP put accelerators into the NES. What do you think about those?
I think those are extremely important in the new player space specifically, because that is a sort of it's sort of in between training at a natural speed and injecting skills. I think that overall CCP should actually speed up by default the new player experience in terms of skill point accumulation, because there are a number of skills in this game that you train them and you get something new and it feels super cool to be doing something new in the game. And there are also a number of skills where you train them and you need to train them, but you don't get any of that incredible hit of I've got something new that I can now do in the game. And a lot of people would refer to a lot of those types of skills as the Magic 14 skills.
Yep.
Ones that give you better capacitor, ones that give you more power grid, ones that reduce the CPU usage of weapons, things like that. You need those, but they give you nothing in that dopamine drip to keep you addicted.
So I've had a number of people come to me this past year wanting me to advocate for basically getting rid of the Magic 14. Just give all the players the skill points up to level 5. What are your feelings on that?
It's a very difficult thing. You would have a lot of players. You would have a lot of players who've already trained them who would feel a bit hard done by that. They would feel that they've wasted their time and ultimately wasted their money when you do that. However, this is very much like that modification of the trolley problem picture, where it says it would be unfair to the people the trolley has already crushed to save the next set of people from it. Sometimes it's not fair, but it may not be fair to the previous set of people, but it is now going to help everybody that comes in the future.
And possibly retain them.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I might favor doing it is I would like to, and I would say rapidly, grant players these skills as they do portions of the tutorial, rather than just giving it to them. I think it could also tie in very nicely with some better tutorial material about learning to fit your ship.
Very true.
It could show you. It could show you some. The tutorial could be teaching you how to fit your ship. It could show you some limitations. Aura could laugh at you because you've run out of power grid, and then she could grant you the skill that gives you the power grid and say, "Fine, there you go. Better now, isn't it? And now you've learned something. Now you've learned something about it, rather than it just appeared in your head and you haven't had any of that learning opportunity." I think this ties in very nicely with something CCP has said for a number of years now, in that they want to remove attributes from the game. Now, that very, very much is something that I really wish they could just pull their finger out and just finally do, because that is some unnecessary complication that makes people have a fear of missing out, makes people feel that they now have to plan for an entire year ahead of them. They don't even know if they want to play this game for a year yet. That is removing attributes is something I think they should just do.
Yep.
Granting people a Magic 14, I think, should be used as a very early learning opportunity.
Totally agree on that. Okay, so the hour has almost passed. I have two more questions for you. But for those of you out in Twitch, if you'd like to ask Fant any questions, now's the time to start furiously typing. And the second last question to you is, out of everything that we talked about, and maybe something we didn't talk about, what is the most pressing issue today in EVE?
it is the projection capabilities of Ansiblex gates. Now, I know that it is not on everybody's, it's not at the forefront of everybody's minds that it is the most important thing in the game. However, I don't want to lie because I'm trying to get different groups of people to vote for me. I would rather lose this election race honestly than pander to groups and pretend I am something I am not. I would rather, yeah, I wouldn't want to win based on what I would deem lies. It is Ansiblex projection. I do think that even if you don't think it affects you, I believe it strongly affects you in this game. It affects every aspect of this game. If you think about it and talk about it for more than sort of 5 or 10 minutes, which if anybody's interested in, I will even do that one-on-one with anybody who messages me on Discord. But there are also other interviews out there that go deeper into it. Ansiblex projection. It needs to be solved. It needs to be solved properly, and it needs to be solved properly the first time so that it doesn't take another 6 months for them to look at it again. It's going to benefit everybody in this game's opportunities and stories as they play this game, which is the most important thing that people are looking for.
Okay, so then how would you change Pirate Faction Warfare to encourage Empire players to interact more?
I believe that the biggest problems with Pirate Faction Warfare are the lack of ante at the moment. They are not taking and losing space the same as the Empire Faction Warfare groups are. Pirate Faction Warfare is coming in, essentially just raiding for money and then going home and waiting for the next one. It's turned it into an almost entirely a area of the game that is used for farming. And that's not a good look. That's not a good look. Something that I'm not going to be pushing for, but it is the way I think it should be, is I think pirate factions should have been a territory holder, just like the Empire navies. I think it should have been 3 groups fighting for territorial control. That is definitely, in my mind, far beyond the scope of what it would be possible to convince CCP to do. But that is how I think it should have been from the beginning. My advice would be that you're going to, if you want to be playing this game for combat with your friends, I'm not going to advise that there is something in Pirate Faction Warfare for you at all. I'm going to advise that you should join one of the Empire factions instead.
And then the next question is, will you help advocate for the much needed Corvette rebalances? Number one most important balance issue ever.
Hey, do you know what? Why shouldn't they be a little bit better? They are never going to be competitive with Tech 1 frigates, but why shouldn't they be slightly better and let people use them for a little bit longer in this game? Something interesting to consider outside of this question about Corvettes is, if you're not, if any viewers aren't aware, go and have a look at some of the limited issue Corvettes. There are some very limited issue and now very expensive because they are not being made anymore. Pirate Corvettes. I'm the proud owner of what's the Guristas one called? What's the Guristas one called? Let's have a quick look. I haven't undocked it because it's garbage. Obviously, it's a Corvette, but I wanted to own one. Show only available, special edition ships.
Taipan?
Taipan, thank you. Taipan. I am the proud owner of a Taipan that's never going to undock. I believe it's worth several billion ISK for the hull alone because of the rarity of them. But they are very nice hangar ornaments to own. So anybody who is interested in the capabilities of Corvettes, go and take a look at the special edition Corvettes to see if there's something there that you want to aim to own that doesn't really do anything.
Which ship class do you think is missing?
I don't believe that there is currently a missing ship class. I believe that there's a commonly thought of missing ship class. There's a number of people who are asking for a Tech 2 version of an attack battlecruiser. So for anybody who's not sure, an attack battlecruiser is not the same as a combat battlecruiser. Something like the Talos or the Tornado is an attack battlecruiser. They are designed to be very thin, reasonably fast, very high damage ships. And every year somebody asks me, hey, so can you get us a Tech 2 attack battle cruiser that fits capital guns? And to them I say, no, I know what ship you want. It's called a dreadnought. It already exists. Go and get one. And they say, yeah, but it's so slow and expensive. And I say, yes, it is. That's the drawback.
And then, go ahead.
I don't think that there is a missing class of ship in the game. I do, however, think that a lot of ships in this game are well overdue a balance pass to make them useful.
Yeah, they are. And last question is, do you have any ideas for small quality of life changes? And I'm sure you probably have lots of them.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I've got them on Phantomite.com. People can go to Phantomite.com to find not just my specifics, big and small, but you can also go there to find a link to my Discord, my Eve thread, to my Twitter, which I don't post as much on, but plenty of ways to get in contact with me. The big quality of life change that I am going to be advocating for is better item management in your hangar. Picture this. Middle clicking and holding on a stack and dragging it to your cargo. And when you release middle click, it asks how many you'd like to move. So you haven't had to hold down shift when you do it. What if you could select multiple stacks of ammo, middle shift and drag those multiple stacks to your ship, type in 1,500 and 1,500 units of all of those stacks of ammo ends up in your ship's cargo. I would like to see sub hangers. I would like to right click on my items hanger and press create sub hanger. I can name it what I like, and it is just a new hanger that I can put items in to keep them separate so that we don't have to use station containers anymore. I would also like, on top of that, when I am fitting a ship with multi-fit, some boxes I can tick to say take from this hanger, and this sub hanger, and I would like the ship to fit from all of those available hangers. How good would all of those changes be, right?
I can definitely get behind all those changes. Really, really good. I have
and another like mildly related one. Why can't I arbitrarily partition my ship's cargo bays? That would be great. If I'm taking my deep space transport and I'm doing shopping for a bunch of my corp mates, how cool would it be if I could put sub cargo holds in my cargo hold on that ship so that I can split people's orders up. Obviously not to increase my cargo capacity, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely.
Look at that. Extra wallets in the chat there. Why not? Why not? It should be arbitrary. It would be fantastic.
Okay, I know I said last question. If we keep this really, really short, we can sneak it in.
Okay.
What kind of suggestions would you have for corp management? I know that we have a lot of CEOs in this chat. I know myself, I absolutely find it a nightmare, and I don't even have an in-game, corporation. So, what would you suggest? What would you suggest for better management?
We have already had a complete UI revamp on the corp management, and that is hugely appreciated. What I would like to see next is not just a new UI, but a complete revamp of the corporate roles system. I would like CCP to introduce a new method of doing corporate roles that is greatly simplified, and I would like CCP to introduce it and then say, and in 6 months we're removing the old one. So port your roles now, get them sorted. And what might also be nice is if you could use ESI to assign those roles as well.
Oh, that'd be nice. Would you also support putting invite member on the dashboard instead of having to go find it every time?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, so final question of the night before we let you go. What other candidates would you like to see elected alongside you?
I would very much like to see Drake Idon. If I don't make it, and he does make it onto the CSM, I am going to be happy overall. Because he shares a lot of the same ideas, he shares a lot of the same ways of thinking, and he is somebody that I know that I can approach to, give him an overview of problems, and he will understand them as well. I am also very likely to be, when it comes up to voting day, I'll be creating my own ballot. I'm also very likely to be recommending Mick Fightmaster, who is a wormhole candidate, who is very experienced in that area, most importantly, but he's also got an incredibly friendly, approachable attitude. And I think that when you combine genuine expertise and care with genuine approachability and understanding, that is the ideal CSM member.
Absolutely, 100%. I really enjoyed my time with Mick, and I think he's very, very good for the wormhole community. Okay, so we are at the end of our hour. If people wanted to continue on this conversation with you, where can they find you?
I am in a lot of Discords. You can ping me in all of them. If you can't find me and you're not sure which Discords I might be in, then most easily you'll find me in the official EVE Online Discord. Most relevantly, you'll find me in my CSM Discord, which is linked at the top of Phantomite.com. And if you want to contact me directly on Discord, I am Whispus. I'm going to type some nonsense into chat because I don't actually need to link my Discord there. My username on Twitch is also my username on Discord. You can see Whispus in there if you want to find the spelling. And Process is obviously going to hand out my telephone number. He's perhaps not going to do that, but yeah, you can definitely message me, and then you can call me after messaging me on Discord as well.
Do you answer your in-game mail?
I do. However, Discord reaches me even when I'm at work.
Okay, thank you so much for coming and talking to us. I
Thank you for having
appreciate
me.
it, and best of luck with your campaign.
Thank you very much. You too.
Okay, so Twitch. I'm going to go now. I have to go and FC a bunch of new players who are going to be learning PvP tonight. And I'm sure that Kiakti there can put the NPSI Rocks calendar if you'd like to come and join us. That will be in about a half hour. So we would absolutely love to see you there. There's free ships and explanations and everything. So I will see you guys then. Thank you so much.